I want to talk to you about something that completely changed my life. Changed my motivation, my drive, my attention span, and just my general feeling of wellness. And that is a healthy relationship with dopamine. You might have heard people talking about dopamine detox. And this is where you avoid dopamine at all costs because it's what's ruining our lives. And I think the premise of that, it's for good, but it's the wrong way of looking at it, in my opinion. So firstly, what is dopamine? Dopamine is a molecule in the human brain. It's a neurotransmitter, and it's responsible for our feelings of motivation. There's a lot of misconception around that it's a reward molecule. And whilst it is largely involved in our systems of reward, it's more of a, it's not exactly pleasure, the feeling of pleasure. It's more, you do something and you get the feeling of keep doing this thing. So it's an ancient system in our brains, so that when we were prehistoric humans, if we found something that tastes good, we would get a release of dopamine and it would motivate us to continue doing that thing. So to sum this up, some scientists done an experiment, and they potentially, arguably not a very ethical one, but they had a rat in a box, and it was trained that when a light came on, it could press a button and receive some food. So they put wires into the rat's brain to read its dopamine levels, and they found out that dopamine wasn't released when it received the food, but rather when the light came on, so soon as it knew that the reward was available, not when it received the reward. Then they decided to remove the dopamine receptors in the rat's brain. They found out that when the rat ate the food, it could still experience pleasure. However, when the light came on, even if the food was placed one rat's body length in front of the rat, without dopamine, it wouldn't even move forward a length of its own body to get the food. So that's how much it's involved in motivation. So dopamine is a good thing, right? Well, here's where it gets a little bit complicated. So certain things spike your dopamine, and they spike it in different ways. Imagine this, we all have a dopamine baseline level, and this is the amount of dopamine that's in you regularly, circulating around. And I'm no scientist, so I'm not explaining this in the best way possible. But certain things spike your dopamine levels. They either spike them like this, or they spike them like this. Okay? So certain things spike your dopamine levels drastically. And these things are scrolling social media, reels, shorts, explicit adult content, drugs, alcohol, gaming, online shopping, binge eating junk food, or seeking validation from online. These things spike your dopamine so high, and then it quickly drops below your baseline. Okay? So when your dopamine is below baseline, you experience a negative experience. You experience craving. And that's what makes everything on that list that I previously spoke about addictive. Okay? So when you're below baseline, you lack energy, you lack motivation, you lack drive. Okay? So have you ever sat there and scrolled through shorts on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and been left with a feeling of, or whilst you're doing it, you're so motivated and addictive, you just want to watch one more, and you can't seem to put it down. Okay? So when you do these things, it leaves you feeling flat, and it makes the idea of reading a book or doing something more difficult unappealing, because it takes too much effort, right? So the problem is with all of these sources of dopamine is that they don't take any effort to get. So going back to talking about prehistoric times, your reward from food would have come after quite a lot of effort, right? You would have had to hunted the food or gathered berries or whatnot. So, what things can raise your dopamine baseline overall instead of dropping it? So just to recap, those things spike your dopamine and then you drop below, leaving you in a craving, which makes you want the thing more. And over time, that lowers your dopamine baseline, which means lower motivation. So some things that require effort, such as exercise, or working towards a long-term goal, or human connection, or going for a long walk, or getting out in nature, or focusing, doing some deep work, reading a book, okay, fasting, a cold shower. These things increase your dopamine, but instead of spiking like that, they increase it like this, and they're long lasting over the day, and it slowly goes down, okay? Leaving you in a state of high energy, driven, motivated, all right? Making hard things seem easy. So with a healthy dopamine relationship, even washing the dishes can be slightly enjoyable. But if your dopamine's all out of whack, it can be the worst thing in the world to have to go and do some effort, to go and put a task in. Oh, do I really have to do that? Yeah, well, think about what you've been doing prior. Have you been doing things which have spiked your dopamine beyond belief, and now you've got a low baseline? So no wonder you're not motivated to do that thing. All right, so I've learned these things from a very interesting book called Dopamine Addiction by Dr. Anna Lemke, and also some podcasts online by Dr. Andrew Huberman. And I would recommend that you check them out for a deep understanding on this issue. It helped me understand addiction as well, why gambling is so addictive. If you think about the rat and the light coming on, he thinks, oh, I could get food. So think about when you're gambling, you think, oh, this could be the time which I win, making it highly addictive, right? The same as scrolling social media. You think, oh, but I might just see one good thing. You might just see one good thing. Let's be real. Out of the hours you've spent scrolling on social media, how much of that time has actually been valuable to you? Okay, you might have learned something, you might have seen the odd interesting thing here and there, but 80% of it is just waffle. So, long story short, chase things that require effort. Value long-term gratification over short-term gratification. Think about future you, not just current you, which wants to seek pleasure in a hedonistic way. Because you think, oh, well, what's the harm in that? Well, the harm is that you're lowering this dopamine baseline, making everything harder for yourself. Now, I'm not saying that all these things have to be avoided at all costs. To some extent, everything's okay in moderation. All right? Everything is about balance at the end of the day. But let's make sure it is balanced. Let's make sure our dopamine relationship is healthy, because that will give you motivation, it will give you drive, it will give you energy to complete those long-term goals that are truly important to you. I hope that roughly explains a complicated concept and motivates you to do something to help yourself. Thank you for listening, and take care, my friends.